welcome back to the show. Today we have Adam and Bruce from 8stem. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys back on the show. I think what you guys are doing at 8stem is actually really cool and fascinating, but maybe before we kind of get into 8stem, maybe if each one of you could give a little bit of a background and quick bio and intro on yourself, and maybe Bruce, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Bruce Pavitt. I've been involved with various facets of the music industry for many decades. I'm probably most noted for being the founder of the Sub Pop record label, the infamous Seattle indie rock label that helped launch the careers of Nirvana and Soundgarden and a lot of the grunge rock that was happening in the early 90s. And I'm fortunate enough to be working with techno visionary here, Adam Farish.
Perfect. Adam?
Yeah. Myself, I usually describe myself as hopelessly obsessed with sound from a very early age. Started playing instruments when I was maybe like 8 or 9 with guitar, and then moved into bass and percussive instruments, and then started hacking 286 computers to record mono audio when I was a kid, because I really wanted to record something, and in that time it was really expensive to do so. Grew up playing music, played in a lot of bands, wanted to do that professionally. Found myself kind of like segueing into the tech industry when I was about 20 years old and needing to pay really high living expenses in the Santa Cruz area of California. So I was roped into being a founding member of a tech company that went, pretty big and flamed out pretty hard, really fast. And then got into another business with my wife, but always wanted to come back to music. So I started talking with Bruce about what the future of music looked like, and we talked about that for almost a whole decade together, which led us to inventing the 8stem format and setting forth to build the platform.
Perfect. Very cool. So for people that haven't heard of 8stem, what exactly is it, and why did you guys decide to co-found it together?
Well, what it is a way to release music so that anybody listening to a song can remix it or change it as the music plays. So if you're listening to a song and you can't stand the saxophone solo, you can just press a button and take it out. Or if you think that the second verse should come before the first chorus, you can move those parts around really effortlessly and then save it. So it allows you to personalize music, to change it to fit exactly your taste.
It essentially allows anybody to be a remixer on their phone. Throughout my career, I've always been fascinated by indie culture, seeing bands put out their own records, then eventually starting my own record label and so forth. And so from my point of view, whenever you give people an opportunity to express themselves creatively and have a distribution channel for that creativity, then interesting things happen.
Totally.
No, I love it. I think it's really cool. And like, I've been a music lover pretty much my entire life from as far as back as I can remember. And so I think what you guys are doing is really cool, because to your point a few minutes ago, just being able to turn off maybe one of the instruments that maybe you're not a fan of, or bump something up that you are a fan of is pretty cool, right? So yeah. For people that haven't actually downloaded and played with the app, kind of walk us through a little bit more of how they actually go about doing that. Because I think the interface when I was playing with the app is actually really intuitive.
Cool. Well, that's good to hear. We're trying to make it more intuitive all the time, to simplify the process. So you start with a piece of music. We deal directly with artists and studios to release their music. So the catalog is curated by us. We think that it's, we're starting with things that we think users will be interested in remixing. Generally, it works with tracks that are like hip hop or electronic or, even soul. But so you start by listening to a track just like you would in any other player, but you can press buttons at the bottom that change the style of the music as it's playing. So you could take a soul song and drop it into a trap style, or make it, drum and bass, or even house for that matter. And then you can go deeper into there and into, that song as a house mix, and then take out the house drums and put in something that is like two-step or something more interesting. So being able to swap out sort of like into deeper areas of sort of like granular functioning, and while the music's playing, and then when you're done, it's just a piece of music that you created.
Ultimately, we want this to be as simple as Instagram. You've got an image, you have a choice of filters, you can use those.
No, I think that's great. So when an artist, you obviously curate the content, but when an artist submits stuff to you, do they need to submit each instrument on a different track to you guys, or how does that kind of process work?
No, no. Generally, I mean, right now we're taking a whole bunch of different kind of formats because we're evangelizing the process. But
Sure.
ideally, they group their audio together. Most people are producing their own music. They don't, it's like artist producer for the most
Sure.
part in this day and age. So we just ask them to group the audio together, which is what stems are. So in the studio, you'd have, hi-hat and snare drum and kick drum and toms and all of those on different audio channels, individual instruments. But for us, for 8-stem, you just group all those together, and those are called drums. And
Got you.
you do the same thing with vocals or lead instruments, and those are called lead. And bass is all grouped on one stem. So that's where stems actually comes from. Is they're groupings of audio that relate to each other.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So how do you guys kind of decide which kind of artists and stuff to pick from? Do you guys basically go out and look for these people? Because obviously, like, you both have connections in the music industry. So how do you find the artists to actually kind of bring onto the platform?
Yeah.
Well, the artists currently on the platform are from Seattle. They're friends or friends of friends. And we found that the fewer legal hurdles there are, the easier it is to get artists to join the platform.
Sure.
So it's like, and generally we look for artists that are not necessarily in the same genre, but whose music would complement each other when it's mixed to create a really dynamic sort of flavor. So we may take a band with really heavy, dark guitars and combine those with really ambient, like acoustic trance music. And those two things together create a really cool fusion. So we search for, rather than like searching for bands, we're searching for more like specific songs that would work well, but with bands that are, like forward thinking and also very creative and want to jump into this new paradigm.
Right. But being a startup, we're taking a more grassroots approach. We have been in conversation with some of the larger music labels, but that's kind of another step in our evolution. Mm-hmm. But for now, if people go to the app, primarily they're going to see mostly independent artists.
Sure. No, I think that's great, right? And I think, at least in my experience, at least they're more open to newer kind of technologies. And I also think, I think it's a little bit more intimate, right? Like, I think maybe the younger generation, where a big pop star is almost like unattainable. And I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but like, if you have these kind of independent, kind of maybe smaller artists that you can go see at a smaller venue, if you can actually like remix those. And I think in some ways, like, fans are a little bit more fanatical maybe with like some of the smaller acts, because they feel more connected to them. They can reach out to them on social media. They'll usually get a response back. So I think having another version and being able to play with your favorite artist's tracks is actually really cool, right? And that's kind of how I see the platform, and you can tell me if that's wrong.
Well,
but
it holds true to varying degrees, and it's not really fair to say that major artists are not into things like this, but rather they're bound by contracts that were written before technology existed. Right. And so even if they want to play with something like this, they really can't, because they're not allowed to do so. So that's part of the evolution of 8-stem, is also educating record executives and people in the industry that this is a new opportunity. Everybody is sitting on this content. Everybody who's been recording music since the mid-'70s has it in multi-channel format. But there's never been a way for consumers to engage with it, because you needed a studio and all this gear, and then you had to know how to use it, and it was basically impossible. So we're looking at taking that experience and distilling it down to something that you can do on your phone, so that all of this content that lives out there can be listened to in a totally new way. And it can be remixed and turned into new things, with attribution always going back to the original owner.
Sure. And that's actually really cool, because it would be cool to remix some of the stuff from the 70s on, right? Like, I think everybody would love that. That's cool. So I'm curious, though, sorry, Bruce, were you going to say something?
Well, another aspect to this conversation is not only remixing, but mashing up a couple tunes together. So combining songs is certainly a trend that we're keeping our eye on as well.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the platform a little bit. If I remember correctly, you guys kind of bootstrapped and self-funded this, correct?
For the most part, I mean, to get us actually started and off the ground, and then we raised a very modest seed round that was mostly friends and family that got us down the road and into beta.
Okay.
And now we are getting ready to hustle again for another round, so that we can, get our next step done, which is, built out for Android and deployed globally.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, how do you guys plan on kind of monetizing the platform?
There's a couple of different ways. Gated content is one method. So really, every remix that's created on 8stem is totally unique, and there's infinite possibilities and permutations for any single song. So the gated content into a subscription model is the most likely scenario, and that's a little bit further down the road. So, in the meantime, we're doing experiments with just like exclusive content that you actually have to pay for. So you've got a song by artist A, you want to drop a vocal by artist B into that song, you pay, whatever, buy some coins or pay a small rate or something like that in order to create something new. But then the big piece of that is that we're set up to publish to every major streaming service in the world. So we will effectively be an aggregator of crowdsourced content that then becomes a catalog for streaming music providers.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So, are you guys working with kind of the Spotify's and the Apple Music and Google Play for that right now then?
We have all of that built, all of the applications built to publish to those platforms, and they're open APIs that run through third parties that allow that to happen. So, ideally, when we actually turn that on and press go with that, it'll be a big surprise for the people at Google and Spotify to see this horrendously huge number showing up on their P&L as an expense having to be paid to us. So get ready.
No, I think that's really cool though, right? Because at least I haven't heard of anybody really doing anything kind of related to what you guys are doing, and I think it's really innovative. And I just want to clarify one thing just for the listener, that you guys are just focused on kind of the iOS right now. You're working on an Android version, and like you don't have a web version, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's music on our website, and you can listen to different mix styles there. All of the core functionality is built on iOS, and you said nobody else really going after this. This is incredibly technically difficult to do this. I mean, when you crack open Spotify, there is a single audio player playing a single audio file in there, and there's nothing really else to contend with. When you crack open 8stem, there's actually 64 audio files playing in there with a sample accurate sync, so it all sounds perfect, and it's really, really difficult to do. So, how we're looking at this is really to platformize it so that when record labels come online and clear their rights to the rest of their catalogs, which they're going to do, that this technology can be used as a backbone for services like Spotify or Pandora or anybody else, so that they can also host this content through us on their platform.
No, I think that's great. And I think why I wanted to mention it is because of what you just pointed out, like how technically challenging this is, and you need a certain amount of hardware that the browser just probably can't really do it yet unless you're maybe on a really high-end kind of computer.
Yeah, it's really difficult to deliver a consistent user experience
Yeah, fair.
across desktop and laptop machines. Mobile devices are pretty predictable, and even now, older Android phones just will not be able to do this. But everything that came out in the last 2 years or so will be just fine, and no hiccups or anything like that. So it's taxing to hardware for sure. But that's why we started with iOS. It's very predictable, and we're only building for 4 different devices right now on iOS, and we'll have to really test on a lot of different devices when we actually do deploy it on Android.
I must say, even though it's only been built for iOS, I was surprised to see that we've been downloaded in over 120 countries already.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some of which I can't even pronounce or find out.
Yeah.
So, pretty
There
stoked about
is
that.
someone in Afghanistan who has an iPhone. Hi.
No, but that's what I love about the internet and technology, and even kind of what you guys are doing, because I've found, like, I used to be that, like, I need the CD or the record and I need it like in a shelf because I want to listen to it. But I got rid of that mentality a few years ago and finally caved and just started paying for a streaming service. But what I love about kind of streaming music or online services is I can find new music, right? And you guys are basically providing a new way to discover music, whether I take something I love, mash it together, and also discover kind of new stuff as well. And I think that's also super important to mention about what you guys are doing, right? Because I can create a mix, you guys can create a mix, we can share each other's mixes, listen to each other's mixes, and I think that almost creates a community around a song or an artist where not really anybody's kind of been doing that. Like, you have Bandcamp and MySpace years ago, but to actually be that intimate where, like, the three of us could basically remix the same track and then see how what it came out to be is really cool, right? And I really want to stress that point to the listener.
Yeah.
I think this is a global tool that encourages community development around certain artists and mixes.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and that infinite that infinite variability that comes from a piece of music. I mean, I'm a producer as well, and I've been, I've mastered and produced a lot of the tracks that are on the system on the platform right now, and every time this happens, like every single day, because I use it for listening too, I'll hear a mix that somebody made, and it's a song that I'm used to and I've probably heard 20 times before, but it'll come to a part where I expect something that I know is going to happen, and all of a sudden, instead of it being a breakdown, it'll be a chorus, or or something else that happens in there. So it's like it's constant novelty, and it's a new way of listening to music where it's like you listen to something and something totally unexpected happens, instead of the thing that you were expecting. And the way that we designed the system was so that you can't really make anything sound bad no matter what you do.
Sure.
So it always goes together. It always flows. But it's new and it's different.
Sure. So are you guys ever going to allow people to upload their own kind of tracks or loops that they could add to other people's songs, or is that something you guys kind of want to stay away from?
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to do it and turn it into more like a, get us out of the quote unquote out of the way of the content onboarding, while we're shopping around and raising capital and doing, like evangelizing it. We just wanted to keep our eye like really on quality control.
Sure.
It's easy enough to poke holes in new technology products, and especially music tech. And you have somebody throwing something in there that is distasteful by some standard, and make it really difficult. So we'll get to the place where we can open it up. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting really close.
No, I think that's great, and I kind of figured that was going to be your answer, because even just getting the quality somewhat close to the tracks that you're adding in could be really difficult for certain people unless you have the proper gear. Yeah,
you need to be. I mean, right now everything that's in here, it's very pro. And it sounds pro, and everything that's made sounds really good. So we're like, we feel good about every single thing that's on the platform right now. And when you open that up to sort of like crowdsourcing that, there's no way that you'll be able to listen to everything on there. Like there's just no way. But we're getting close. We've got most of the bugs worked out.
No, I think that's really cool. So I'm curious though, just to jump back for a second, do you guys kind of have a rough time frame of when Android will be out? Kind of late 2017, early 2018, or kind of beyond that, or do you know yet?
2018, probably early spring 2018.
Okay, no, that's fair, and I think I totally get why you went iOS, and Android's kind of a bit of a nightmare for development, just knowing that from my kind of own experience. So I totally get that. But I think just giving the listener a little bit of a time frame makes a lot of sense. So, but I'm curious to know, you guys mentioned about funding, and I think this show kind of airs a little bit all over kind of the States. And what are you guys kind of, you don't have to give amounts or anything, but is there kind of a time frame if somebody was maybe interested in actually maybe reaching out to you guys for some sort of investment? What is there kind of a time frame that you guys are looking at?
Yeah. Well, we're all, everybody who's raising wants to wants to close it yesterday.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Do the thing that you want to do. But we'll close this round before the end of 2017 for sure.
Okay. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and maybe somebody will reach out to you for being on the show, and that would be awesome. But I'm curious to know, what other kind of things are you guys kind of looking at maybe adding in the future, or is it kind of too early to kind of mention any of those things? Because you kind of did on the radio version a little bit, and it's just...
Well, there's a couple of things like you just touched on, opening up the content pipeline. That's going to be a big one for us, because that'll be another piece of technology that we've built and are stoked about that allows people to do that. But we're shifting into, or we're adopting kind of the playlist model. So we're looking at how people actually use 8stem after they've created something. Okay. So we're introducing playlists, and also like a whole streaming side of it that's going to be within the app, so that people can create playlists, share playlists with other people, and then actually edit the music that's within their playlists, like create new stuff out of the songs in their playlist. So that's kind of the next piece that we're working on right now, is to open up the listening side, the consumption side of the content within the app.
Sure. No, I think that's great. Go ahead, Bruce.
We won't have as much material as Spotify, but will be more interesting.
No, you're not wrong. But sadly, guys, we're coming to the end of the show. So let's close with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys and 8stem.
Yeah. I mean, best place is our Facebook page, really, facebook.com/8stem, number 8stem. There's a blog on our website at 8stem.com that has all of our stuff on there. You'll be on there too, Kevin, when this goes live. So it's just kind of, following in our footsteps. And then check in with those to see where we are. We do a lot of conferences and things like that. And if there's musicians that or you are a musician listening to this, reach out and hit us up, and let's see if we can work together and make some magic happen.
Totally.
Perfect, guys. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks,
awesome.
Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.